Coming up on Network Africa, ex-soccer star George Weah takes early lead in Liberia election. South African President Jacob Zuma to face corruption charges as Supreme Court rules. And opposition leaders and supporters back on the street in Kenya say they are not intimidated by the ban and would proceed with protests. Welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Walker. We begin with election results from Liberia, where former soccer star George Weah takes the lead as early presidential election results in 11 of Liberia's 15 voting regions trickle in. Weah's main rival, incumbent Vice President Joseph Boakai, leads in one county and is second in most others. National Elections Commission Chairman Jerome Kakoya says all parties should refrain from utterances that could mislead the public. Kakoya announced partial results accounting for about a third of the votes counted. The two top vote winners from the field of 20 candidates would advance to a runoff in November in the event that no one wins an outright majority. Boakai and Weah both signaled they were heading for victory in Liberia's presidential elections as they waited for early results on Thursday. A candidate needs more than 50% of the votes for outright victory, and if no one achieves that, then a second round will be held in November this year. Foreign observer missions on Thursday say that the first round of Liberia's presidential election was broadly free of irregularities ahead of an expected announcement by the Electoral Commission of provisional results. Three political parties that fielded candidates in the election, however, alleged fraud and vowed to contest the results, threatening to mar an election expected to mark Liberia's first democratic transfer of power in more than 7 decades. According to reports, materials including ballot boxes arrived late in some locations on election day, and some people had struggled to find their names on voter rolls. But there was so far no evidence that this was linked to illicit activity. Observers from the European Union and US-based Carter Center and National Democratic Institute insist they had not identified any major problems in the voting or subsequent counting.
The most remarkable aspects of this is that despite the frustration, despite the heat, despite people being hungry, it was another example of the peaceful approach, the ability of the Liberians and the desire for Liberians to be determined to cast their vote. People were forced to wait, and they waited. People were forced to wait, and they waited peacefully. And that was a remarkable testament, again, to the will of the Liberian people to continue this peaceful and democratic process. To the extent that there are complaints or issues, there is a legal process that will be followed, or that should be followed. And the Carter Center will be here to observe those dispute resolution processes throughout. But ultimately, that's where the judgment comes from, is from the people of Liberia and the election process that has been put in place.
The Commission asks all other organizations to refrain from announcing anything other than the official result released. Candidates and political parties should also be patient and await the official result and not rush to premature conclusions. The Commission is committed to the timely release of results, but this cannot be done at the expense of accuracy.
And to South Africa, the corruption case against its president, Jacob Zuma, has refused to go away. He must face fraud charges, racketeering and money laundering. The Apex Court agreed with the lower court ruling last year that prosecutors could bring back about 783 counts of corruption allegations relating to a 1999 arms deal. The charges relate to Mr. Zuma's relationship with the businessman Shabir Shaikh, who was tried and found guilty in 2005 of soliciting bribes from a French arms company for his benefit. President Zuma has battled for years to avoid going on trial for the corruption charges linked to a politically charged bribery scandal that stretches back into the 90s. Zuma's presidential term ends in 2019, when he will not be eligible to stand in another election, having already served 2 terms in office. Roberto Dibia, our South Africa Bureau Chief, joins us from Johannesburg via telephone. Welcome to the program. What does this really mean for President Jacob Zuma? And if you can, give us an idea of the court's hierarchy in South Africa.
Well, first of all, you have the Constitutional Court, which is supposed to be the highest, but it still has its own powers, which means to interpret the Constitution and bring clarity. Now, the Supreme Court of Appeal gives you room to appeal. You can approach it directly, even if you don't have leave to appeal, which was not granted in this case to the President's legal team as well as the NPA. So what happened today, the Supreme Court of Appeal upheld the ruling of the High Court, which said that the onus now lies on the National Prosecuting Authority to reinstate the charges against the president. It's not instructing it to, but the onus now lies in the interest of separation of powers. The onus now lies on the NPA to reinstate those charges if it decides to do so. But there is a lot of pressure. People are looking to the NPA right now.